To Kill a Mockingbird, video 26. Let me reread the paragraph now that we know the words mode, right? When you leave food, let's imagine, here I have some cream cheese, let's imagine you leave cream cheese out, then some mold will start creating. Boo's transition from the basement to back home was nebulous in Jim's memory. Mrs. Stephanie Crawford said some of the town's council, somebody who was part of the council, right, told Mr. Radley that if he didn't take Boo back, Boo would die of mold from the damp. Of course, a basement usually is very damp. I hope you are familiar with the word damp. That is humid, right? When there is humidity. And then, of course, where there is humidity, there is mold. Where there is mold, it's kind of dangerous. You start coughing. It's a big problem. I know that because my second house was very damp, and a lot of mold. We had to wash the house all the time, and my poor oldest son Victor suffered a lot. My daughter as well. They would cough all the time, and then we would have to go to the doctor all the time. And then we thought that they had, any kind of disease, or the doctors had some theories there, but actually it was the house. After that we moved, and they didn't have any other problems at all. So mold is dangerous, right? Besides, Boo could not live forever on the bounty of the county, right? Nobody knew what form of intimidation Mr. Radley employed to keep Boo out of sight, but Jem figured that Mr. Radley kept him chained to the bed most of the time. Atticus said no, it wasn't that sort of thing, that there were other ways of making people into ghosts. First of all, I really like this construction. Make people into ghosts, because this is what they did. Mainly Mr. Radley, but his wife as well, right? This is what they did to, I would say, poor Boo. I don't know. They made him into a ghost, right? And then, of course, a question we have to ask is, how could the father keep the son inside of the house? Remember, the guy was already 32, right? 32, 33 years old. And the father couldn't be so much stronger than the son. And the father wouldn't be able to keep an eye on the guy all the time. So, is the guy chained to, a place? And then Atticus said, no, he isn't. And there are other ways to making people into ghosts. I don't know. Can you imagine? I don't know. Did his father torture him? Did his father terrorize him? Did his father threaten him? I really don't know. But it's kind of, scary to think that there are ways of making people into ghosts. My memory came alive to see Mrs. Radley occasionally open the front door, walk to the edge of the porch, and pour water on her cannas. But every day Jem and I would see Mr. Radley walking to and from town. I think I should give you cannas, right? Cannas is a beautiful kind of flower. I have no idea how we would call it in Portuguese, but I put the picture there for you in our Quizlet, cannas. So, I don't know, maybe the author is telling us that Boo wasn't, trapped inside the house, because we could see that sometimes Mrs. Radley and many times Mr. Radley would get out of the house, and, who would have kept the guy there, But every day Jem and I would see Mr. Radley walking to and from town. He was a thin, leathery man with colorless eyes, so colorless they did not reflect light. It's important, I think, for us to remember that this is not just a bunch of words, wow, the guy said, so he has colorless eyes. If we trust the narrator, this is a perception she had. The eyes of this man was colorless, and it didn't reflect light. What does that mean? I think it's very hard to imagine that, right? But our narrator perceived that, and she's challenging us into perceiving that too. His cheekbones were sharp. Cheekbones, okay? These are the cheekbones. His cheekbones were sharp, and his mouth was wide, with a thin upper lip and a full lower lip. Mr. Stephanie Crawford said he was so upright, he took the word of God as his only law, and he believed her. No, sorry, and we believed her. Let me just give you one more word I forgot. Keep in mind that this man was leathery, okay? So it means that he has very thick and dry skin. I put a very nice picture of an old man or lady there. You can see the back all wrinkled up, and probably you have thick skin. So this is for you to form the image. So this leathery man with colorless eyes, and he was very upright. Let me give you a definition for upright. Adhering strictly to moral principles. Okay, so you are completely moral, right? Sometimes you are narrow-minded, sometimes you are square, because you're too upright, right? Another way to say that is righteous. So he was so upright, he was so correct, he was so traditional, that he took the word of God as his only law, and we believed her. We believed that he took the word of God as his only law. Think about it. Oh, that's so nice. He takes the word of God as his only law, right? But think a little bit about it. The Bible, depending on the way you interpret, can be a book of hate. Depending on the way you interpret, can be a book of love, right? And I believe a guy as upright as this man here, he'll interpret the Bible in the most strict way possible. The Bible would say, for example, if you had a leper in your town, all right, or in your village, you should expel the leper from, leprosy, that horrible disease that starts eating, the flesh of people out. The Bible said, for example, that if your wife is an adulteress, you can stone her to death. Okay? Those things are prohibited, right? You cannot just expel a person from a city, right? You cannot stone a woman to death. So, if I believe in the Bible, and I live in the civilian society, I have not only the law of the Bible, but I have the regular law, right? Okay. The Bible doesn't say anything about beating your child up. The Bible isn't in favor. The Bible just says vague things like love your child, but doesn't say anything about beating your child up. Now let's imagine if you beat your child up a lot, very strongly, this is child abuse, right? And hopefully you're not going to do that because you love your child, but also because there is a law. Now, if you take the word of God as your only law, so you will tell to yourself that it doesn't matter if there is a law, or if people believe that it's bad to beat your child or even your wife up. No, the only thing that matters is the word of God. And remember, guys, when we listen to the word of God, we listen through our voices, right? We can listen to the word of God through our voices. And once you are using your voice to interpret and to say the word of God, you can do many horrible things, right? Because you can just change the message completely. So that's why it's such a serious thing that he took the word of God as his only law. And we believed her because Mr. Radley's posture was ramrod straight. Ramrod. Oh, sorry, I didn't. Oh, yes, I did put a picture there. In the past you would have, let me read the definition. A long, thin rod. Rod like a stick, let's put it this way. Like a fishing rod, So it's a long, thin rod that pushed gunpowder down the barrel of a musket. You would put some gunpowder, old guns, right? So you would have like a kind of rifle, but we're going to call it musket. So you would get gunpowder. Gunpowder, right? Gunpowder is that thing that causes explosion, right? That's why we call gunpowder, right? Because it's the pounder we use for gun. And you're okay with pounder, right? Like chocolate pounder, right? Okay, so you would put gunpowder down, the tube of a musket, and then you would have a kind of stick that you would use, to push the gunpowder down. So when you fired it, it would be down there, right? And then this expression is straight as a ramrod. It is a possible expression. Ramrod straight, okay? Take a look at the definition of the expression. In a very stiff or straight way. Used to describe a way a person sits or stands, right? It's like this. Okay. That's nice. He never spoke to us. When he passed, we would look at the ground and say, "Good morning, sir." And he would cough a reply like, Mr. Radley's elder son lived in Pensacola. He came home at Christmas, and he was one of the few persons we ever saw enter or leave the place. From the day Mr. Radley took Arthur home, people said the house died. But there came a day when Atticus told us he'd wear us out if we made any noise in the yard, and commissioned Calpurnia to serve in his absence if she heard a sound out of us. Take a look. This is interesting, the way the narrator organizes things. Up to the end of this paragraph, we're pretty lost, But, okay, so we're talking about Mr. Radley, right? But there came a day when Atticus told he would wear us out. Wear us out is regional English. I think it's just in the South, if I'm not wrong. I don't. Yes, chiefly southern United States. It's to spank the kid. It's like to punish the kid. Okay, so we're talking about Mr. Radley, and then the narrator says, but one day Atticus told us that he would beat us up, he would spank us, if we made any noise in the yard, and commissioned Calpurnia. Commission is like gave the Calpurnia the job to serve in his absence. So she would spank them if they made any noise, if she heard a sound out of us. And then we're what? And just in the end we have the explanation for that. Mr. Radley was dying.